The passing of the 1930 Natives Land Act marked the formal dispossession of land in South Africa. Sol Plaatje, founder of the then African Natives Congress, unsuccessfully challenged the British government to scrap the legislation a year after the act became law. When apartheid was enacted in 1948, land dispossession continued. Residents of District 6 in Cape Town were some of the casualties of forced removals.
On 11 February 1966, District 6 was declared a white group area. And that essentially meant that District 6 was declared white and all black people had to leave the city. About 60,000 people were forced to leave. What you see behind me is really the images that people from District 6 took as the area was being demolished. So it's images of young high school students who would go to school and on the way would take photographs of the buildings that would be demolished around them.
This is the house of Zubeida Hendricks, a 100-year-old District 6 beneficiary under government's restitution program. Her daughter Zahra says her mother almost gave up after struggling for many years to claim back what was dispossessed from her. She had to take up the fight for her mother.
Practically every week I was at the land claims office to come and inquire about her claim. And she was given the key in 2013. And then she was very, very happy to move back to District 6. That was her wish, to come back to District 6.
Zahra, who's also chairing the District 6 committee, says the slow progress in resettling many of the claimants remains a concern. The Land and Accountability Research Center at the University of Cape Town reflects on the lack of progress in addressing the land question 110 years later and in a democracy.
So looking back, I think the progress has unfortunately been quite slow, especially in the last 30 years, despite the constitutional commitment to land reform and the fact that a land reform program is laid out in the Constitution.
The debate on land ownership continues to be a thorny issue for some.
We are still where we were in 1913 or 1652. 29 years in the so-called democracy. It is worse. We are still, I don't even think we are still holding onto 13%. I think we're at 8% now. Every land has been taken by white people.
To say 87% of land was owned by whites is not correct. We must, the moment we talk about hectares, we must realize, if you go, for instance, to the Karoo, if you have a farm there less than 10,000 hectares, you cannot farm, you can't do anything with the land. It's not productive. So that is not a correct way to see land reform. In fact, there is statistics that is actually shown that if you take urban land and you include it, then you will find that about between 66 and 70% of land is actually occupied by black people.
When the Deputy President recently faced oral questions in the NCOP, he acknowledged that the land question remains a thorny issue.
We have accepted ourselves as the governing party that land reform has been slow. But I don't think we should give an impression that nothing has happened. If you look at the figures out there, I won't quote most of them, but for instance, a total of 552,000 households have benefited from land reform programs.
Mercedes Besant, SABC News, Parliament.